MakingStarWars.net.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net. Hopefully you can hear me. I think you can. And tonight, I'm joined by my buddy James.
What's up?
How's it going, man?
It's going good.
Yeah, we haven't had a schedule meetup in a while, and so I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna do a Sunday fun day, as who said that? Talking Sith said. I was like, yeah, Sunday fun day. Let's do that. Let's drop a little something on Sunday night. That way, my Monday morning is nicer. You know, I can just wake up, hang out, be like, hey, Star Wars Santa, how you doing, buddy? Let's talk about what happened last night, as opposed to having to rush it out. So I just posted the article right now, and gonna put it up here, and we're gonna be talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Rogue One connection. And I called it the Rogue One connection to obscure some of the spoilers. It is a Rogue One connection, like that's legit. I wouldn't say it's the biggest thing about this piece, excuse me, but it is the best way of not saying, hey, here's a huge spoiler in the title. But I also know that when everybody covers it, they'll probably just take it into a different direction and just put the spoiler in the title and get way more, what Google Chrome would like. Oh my God, are you kidding me right now? It's all like, you have to open up the security preferences and allow this program the ability to do this live on your show. Because why wouldn't we just make that a thing right now?
Good times.
So, yeah. So let's see. Let's see if it will work now. Okay, wait. Chrome.
It's the joys of being alive.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
There we go.
Ta-da.
Yeah, look, we got Rob's logo that he made us, our Nickelodeon. I call it the squirt. That's what I call it. I don't know what he called it. But exclusive, Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi's Rogue One connection. So jabim me up. Last year, during the filming of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, I learned that Jabim was being brought to live-action Star Wars. Fans of the expanded universe / Legends content are fairly familiar with the rainy, muddy world of Jabim. The planet is known as one of the locations the Republic military went through hell on. Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi does not, I wrote does, got my first typo, does not seem to really make Jabim a nicer place a decade later. This is where we come to our connection to Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Saw Gerrera's Partisans. The Partisans, they're back. Those are that group of freaks that hang out with Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. They are also in the video game Fallen Order. And so this is where we first, I think maybe this is maybe like where we first see them in live action when they're not a bunch of crazies. Jabim is where a partisan played by O'Shea Jackson Jr. is operating from in the limited series. O'Shea Jackson is not playing young Saw Gerrera, in case you were wondering. I'm also told the droid we see in the teaser trailer is with the partisans on this world as well. So if you keep wondering why I'm telling you that's not Captain Rex's ass, it's because it's this droid or Cody's ass or whoever's ass you want it to be. It's this droid. The partisans are dressed in very World War I style costumes is the best way to describe them at this point in time. And so I just got this little photo from World War I of, kind of like what they were going for.
It's a good look.
It's a good look, I can't promise the mustaches, but
gotta have the mustache.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you really want to, and then here's a fun fact for you: clone trooper weapons. Some of the partisan fighters use clone trooper blasters that have been modified to be more lethal than the civilized Republic allowed. I guess that's some backstory bullshit. That has to be, surreal for Obi-Wan Kenobi on some level. The Jedi returns to a place where he nearly lost his life in war, only to find a new crisis and the weapons of his former allies being used against the Empire still. So pretty weird. So pacifist partisans. There is a sequence filmed about a group. Oh, my second typo. Jesus, I can't not have typos. I got to do these articles at a different time. There is a sequence filmed about a group of partisans who have no idea how to fight. They're just not fighters. It's not what they signed up for. There is some ambiguity here, but Manhattan Beach actors playing the partisans seem to have been put into two camps. One camp fights, and one camp does not know how to fight, and seems to be more about the humanitarian efforts rather than war. So, you signed up to join Saw Gerrera to make a difference, and some people think it's for this one thing, and some people think it's for this very different thing. And
so it sounds like they're setting up the split.
Sounds like it to me. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get into it, and yeah, I'm curious to what you think, where your head goes on this one.
Yeah.
So, and we have seen Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We know this group becomes radicalized, paranoid, and heartless. We know they will do anything, including civilians and innocents. And apparently, things change a lot in the aftermath of Kenobi's time with them. Perhaps some of these resistance fighters join up with Bail Organa's Rebel Alliance, and all that are left are the weirdos like Two Tubes by Rogue One. That's just my guess. I do not have any sources that have recognized any classic Rogue One characters like Moroff or Two Tubes. Sources said they were primarily younger humans playing partisans in the limited series. This does not mean they are not there, but I can't confirm that, and I have not heard a word on Saw Gerrera in the story either. I don't believe Saw Gerrera is in it. For the record, I'm very certain he's not in it. And then I tell people, come and hang out on the show, subscribe to the channel, like the video, become a channel member. It's the best way to support the channel. It also helps support the site. Or you can become a Patreon supporter, and you can get podcast versions of this show. And also, it just generally helps support me in my endeavors to pull spoilers out of my butt that are very accurate. So we basically we have O'Shea Jackson, who is I think more of on the fighter side of things, but he seems to sort of be like, from the sounds of things, like he has his foot in both camps here. Like he definitely understands the people that don't know how to fight and are there as part of a humanitarian effort. And then he also understands the let's kick their ass because the Empire is just tyrannical, Yeah. And so I'm wondering if this, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I don't want to, and so, but is this going to be like, might this thread pick up into Andor?
Andor. It's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was an opportunity for sure. I mean, Andor's what, 5 years after this? I think it's 4 or 5 years before Rogue One. So that would put it a good, so we could actually see in live action this group radically change from a little bit of because we don't really see the Rebel Alliance. We see the Alliance being a fun club of like-minded individuals who get in big circles and don't do a thing.
Right.
In Rogue One.
Right. And then you have the whole Rebels thing where they kind of sort of move towards that. So if they're putting, I guess, Andor at the same timeline, so he's just going to be basically like some little cell off in the corner somewhere doing God knows what. But but I didn't even think about that in terms of, I just assume, because of course you see him in Rogue One, and the Alliance is more or less formed at that point.
Right.
And certainly even if you set it a little bit after Rebels, you could conceivably say this is the Rebel Alliance. The interesting thing, and even when they announced the show Rebels, I thought, how are they going to do that? Because you literally have in the opening crawl, they state like the Alliance has won their first victory. So that means anything that you show before A New Hope is the Rebels getting their ass kicked.
Well,
so you can show no victories before that for the Alliance, because it says right in the crawl in black and white, this is the first win for the Alliance. Now, you could show a Rebel cell here or there having a victory, but in terms of the actual what you see in the OT, they never win a damn thing.
Yeah. I was talking to Bespin Bolton about it, and he's like, they really love that Saw Gerrera partisan stuff, don't they? And I'm like, yeah, I think they do, because I think it's the alt rebellion, and it allows them to do whatever they want. Like if it's not the Bail Organa, Mon Mothma sort of, philosophically sound characters, then you're able to go and tell whatever stories you want.
Yeah.
You're able to mix them up, and if you love one of them and you don't want them to stay as a bastard, you just kick him over to Bell. Oh, you know what? I don't agree with civilian targets. Peace out. I'm going to Alderaan now. And you just do it like that.
Yeah.
And but I'm curious because there were rumors I've talked about on the show, and I'm curious if what I heard about on the show was actually more related to this than this other Saw Gerrera minded show. But I heard that there was a show coming, and it was Saw Gerrera's show. And I didn't make it an article on the site. I just wasn't really filling the site at the time. Still a little bit down on myself and everything. And I was just like, I talked about it on here. But then as it started to develop, I started to learn about this episode of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, where the Partisans are in it. So I'm like, is this the kickoff to that, or was this just that? See,
Yeah.
so you know what I mean? That's always the big mystery I have on some of this shit. Like, was I hearing about this because of this reason, or?
I mean, I think they like the character Saw Gerrera a lot, and certainly, as everybody kind of knows, I'm sure by now, that was a Lucas creation, and it was actually created for the Underworld show, and it was about having this morally ambiguous character. That's kind of, but it's because of the nature of that character. I don't think he's a good main character, so I don't see him having his own show. I think he's one of these guys that really kind of puts your character into a dilemma where they have to kind of make a moral choice. Is this right or wrong? And so I think it's kind of cool if they did that, because it gives that shade of gray to the rebellion to say, well, yeah, just because they were fighting for the good guys or against the Empire doesn't mean that they're squeaky clean and that they're morally upstanding citizens. So it's a cool dynamic to add to the show.
Yeah. Well, especially because like in Clone Wars, they introduced Saw Gerrera in Clone Wars, and he's fighting alongside his sister on Onderon, and his sister Steela seems to be the one who is a little bit more of a righteous leader in a good way. Like, she seems more like a Bell Organa type, and she dies in it, and then it's just him, and then he's taken over for her. But we also have this guy who's been fighting in these wars since he was like 20, and we see him, he's like Forrest Whitaker, he's like old. Like, by the time we get to Rogue One, he's never had a break. He's been doing this the whole time. Even Kenobi, who doesn't have a walk in the park, has to go, gets to go and just at least lay on a cave floor and cry himself to sleep for a couple of years, for a decade. Saw's in it the whole time, and that's kind of, it's a fascinating angle to take all of this stuff, and eventually you are going to break. I mean, eventually you are going to lose your moral compass when you're just seeing, atrocity after atrocity just over and over for over 20 years, right? I mean, that makes sense to me anyways, that eventually you would probably crack, which is what he does. He's paranoid, he's delusional. But what we are seeing are, I think, like the young kids that are coming in with the right mindset, and it's like I said before, I think it's inspiring to Kenobi, and I'll have a little bit more on that this week. We'll get into some of that stuff. I didn't want the Partisans returning to be buried under all this other stuff, so I was like, you know what? Let's just let tonight be about the Partisans. Let's just let the Partisans, have their day. But because people are really fascinated by O'Shea Jackson's character, about what he's going to be and what's he going to do and that kind of stuff. And I don't think he's, I think he is in the second episode. I think we've seen him in with Kamal Nanjiani's character, or not with him, but related to that sort of network. And then I think in the fifth episode is where he really comes into play, and it has a lot to do with how Kenobi is viewing the galactic struggle, and when he sees all these people. But also, what's rad about it is Kenobi's going back to Jabim, and that's it for Clone Wars book people and comic books and all that jazz. It's a planet where things don't work out well for them. And he ends up back there in a fight again. But here is one of the, we'll get ahead of ourselves a little bit here, is when I was talking to sources and people who were in it, and people who were worked on the episode, and people who were in the episode, um, they were all of these people told me, not the people who worked on it, but the people who were involved. They were like, yeah, we think this whole thing happens, and we think it like flashes back to the Clone Wars with Anakin and Obi-Wan, like when they're there. Well, my other sources at Lucasfilm, they were like, oh, the main flashback is in the dojo, and it happens like in the so is there a baby chance that does happen? There is, but I have not been able to get one piece of information stating we get a Clone Wars flashback to Jabim while he's on Jabim. It's like he's on Jabim, he's been here before, but it's actually what gets Anakin on the mind, and then how we get to the flashback sequence where he remembers, yeah, I trained this fucker. I can beat him. I know everything he knows. I taught him how to play chess, Of course I could beat him. I know all of his opening moves, stuff like that. And but I don't know what I don't know. That's just the truth, and I'm not going to have so much hubris that I think like, oh, yeah, definitely, I could tell you for sure. I know every single thing that happens, no matter what. Because I mean, I think I do, but I don't know what I don't know. So with that in mind,
we can always Mike Zero it,
We could, yeah. He pulls down the Star Destroyer with his mind. He's played by Jeff Bridges, and he pulls it down, and then we go back to the flashbacks. Yeah. And in the flashback, it's pretty rad because Keira Knightley's playing Padme.
Yeah, the weird part was the Bollywood musical in episode 6. I didn't see that coming.
I did. No, but yeah. So I feel like naturally that's where this is going to go, though.
Yeah.
This is where people who I heard that do that game I heard. Maybe it's for something else that they play that game. Like, sometimes I hate it when I legitimately say that, because it's like legitimately like a reason to say it. Right. But I see fakers just doing it constantly, and I'm just like, like there's just no way in hell you could think these X, Y, and Z. There's just no way in hell you would think that. But anyways, I'm just warning everyone to be cognizant of that. Don't let them play with your expectations.
No, you're saying Saw Gerrera though is 100% not in the show, though, correct?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, everyone I've been told no Saw Gerrera across the board, and he may be in Andor. There's a good chance he's in Andor even.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I don't believe Saw Gerrera comes up in this at all. And to such a degree, for a time, I was chasing down if O'Shea Jackson Jr. was playing young Saw. We're a few years before, and we, you know what I mean? And they already had him play, but I thought, you never know, right? I mean, O'Shea could, in theory, play a young Forrest Whitaker if they wanted to go that way.
Sure. I mean, given his appearance in Clone Wars, sure.
I mean, he doesn't look consistent in any way ever.
Yeah. Why not?
But he's definitely not Saw Gerrera.
Okay.
And I have absolutely no indication Saw Gerrera is involved. And by every indication, it looks like by the time we get to Rogue One, at least Jeddah, it's all different people. It's only only the crazies are alive, and only the crazies have stuck around, and everyone else has defected or died.
Yeah, but would it seem weird if they like brought up the Partisans, but then don't include anybody from Rogue One? Because it's like, here's this group from Rogue One, even though you don't recognize anybody that's in it. I mean, I'd be like, that'd be strange. That'd be a weird flex. So I can't imagine. There's either got to be something where it's happened way before, where it's a flashback, or I would think they at least have to have some kind of explanation as to like mentioning Saw, or hey, he's at the grocery store picking up smokes or
something. I think you're onto something with that.
Yeah.
I think we do hear something about Saw.
Okay.
I just don't remember. I am sorry. We were out. We were having some beers, and I remember somebody kind of hinted around it, and I just don't remember what it was. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I just don't remember on that one. If one of my Manhattan Beach friends happens to be watching tonight and you want to just text me and remind me, that would be rad. But if you're not, I understand it's Sunday fun day. But yeah, so anyways, it was an interesting kind of thing though to like try to search out, is this Saw Gerrera, is it not, and you don't want to be like that fan that every single time someone has dark skin you think it's Lando. Those guys, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy at all.
Yeah, I think Finn is Mace Windu's grandson.
He must be.
Oh, come on, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's Mace Windu and Lando's second cousin once removed or something. But yeah, no, but his character, like, I don't think is super big in the series. Like, I don't think he's like he's definitely a main character. Like in the episode, he's like a starring role in it and stuff like that. But also, I don't think it's like the O'Shea Jackson Jr. series. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and he's like an important player in it. You know what I mean? And I've heard that he's good in it. And then I've tried to fish out, like, do you think they're setting this up for there to be something more to him? This isn't going to go anywhere else. And they're just like, I don't know. They're all. I wouldn't have thought Timothy Oliphant's character was going to be anything either, but Timothy Oliphant really shines, and I didn't really see it, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think, when Disney sees it on screen and then they realize something's working.
Yeah.
But I wonder, because you always had to take into consideration, because we can sit there and think about it in terms of like the universe and timeline and in universe. But when you think about from the production side, when did Andor finish writing, and when did that start filming? And if there was anything that they referenced to Obi-Wan in there, to the Obi-Wan thing, because Lord knows that Obi-Wan went from a movie to a TV show to, we're starting filming this week to everybody go home.
Wait, yeah.
So in all those changes, were there things that were already kind of baked into Andor that they had intended to link back to Obi-Wan, but now, things change and things get weird like that.
Yeah.
That's always the hard thing to do. And even Spider-Man, the recent Spider-Man movie came out. Originally, I think it was Doctor Strange was supposed to be released before Spider-Man. And then since they had to flip the order, that required changes to those movies to make it cohesive so people weren't confused by things. It's tough. So there might be things that, that they had planned in Andor that were already filmed and shot and locked in, and they said, we don't want to do this anymore, and too bad. It's the show, we filmed it, it's done.
Yeah, no, and I'm curious if they will ever tell us about that stuff. Like will they ever go into it, or does it? Sorry, I didn't realize my light was so low. I was working in here for a while, didn't realize it. But yeah, with like Andor happening pretty much concurrently, in certain ways, it makes me think these things may not talk to each other. They definitely could, but they may not because of that reason. Like I feel like when something is set and established and the nuances there, that's when they feel more comfortable with digging in and connecting things in certain ways. But I would also have to think that it in Andor's world, Saw Gerrera's sort of him having defected seems like it was a big deal, or that they don't even talk anymore, that there's two separate things seems like a big deal. They also seem afraid of trying to even interact with them for some reason, and which he's nuts, so it does make sense. But might we see that in Andor? And if so, this might be a good sort of a good setup for that, in a way that if these shows do have some connectivity. If they don't, I'm fine with them not. But if they did, it would be nice if it's done in a effortless and clever way like that.
It has to be something obvious, like Luke showing up to take Grogu is. I think everybody kind of all arrows point to this direction, kind of thing. So it's not something that's you have to work towards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd rather them not as much as possible because you hear a lot of people talk about like this makes the universe small, which I tend to agree with. That if everybody knows everybody, it tends to kind of shrink this giant galaxy into the size of a broom closet. And also it gives you those problems where all of a sudden where production changes and you want to do something on this show that you change your mind on, but now it's connected to this show, so you have to go with that. You kind of get into these weird situations where you're not as free to do as exactly what you wanted to do.
Right.
So I'd rather they just not, unless it's something that it's so basic and so like you almost can't get away from it, versus like how do we make these two things talk to each other? It's like if they don't, they don't. Just leave it, let it go.
Yeah. Well, and it's it sounds like the sequence is pulling on like World War One kind of vibes, which World War One never seems fun. Even when it, like if it's World War Two, it's never fun. But you're like, there's this sort of like patriotism that's in World War Two stuff that's not in World War One stuff. Like we never pull fun patriotic stuff where you're like, it's like, fuck yeah, war, we're doing it. Like you never see that in World War One. So when I hear all of these like World War One strings being pulled, I'm like, it sounds like a bad time. And it was a bad time in the Clone Wars for that planet too.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, I'm trying to think of the aesthetic for the partisan. Well, what would become the partisans on Onderon? Because of course they had their costumes, and I definitely had like a Macquarie flair to it, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm trying to think, did that in any way evoke a World War One kind of reference?
It was. Way? You may be able to draw some of those lines, but there was also sort of I don't know if tropical is the right way of putting it, but they were like Onderon wasn't cold. Yeah, it was like they had like a, so it kind of had some of that to some extent. But then when we see them in Star Wars Fallen Order, they're playing more on just like classic Rebel, like early versions of the Rebel stuff.
Yeah.
In that version, and that's on Kashyyyk. It's like a different environment. Whereas Jabim is like rainy and muddy.
Yeah, it almost kind of is like what's the planet from Solo?
I thought it was funny because the very first time I heard it, I thought it was the same planet. I was like, oh, they're using the Solo stuff. Yeah, I thought, when I heard World War One, I thought of the gas mask and stuff, and it's muddy and
trench coats. Yeah.
So I think it's going to be not unlike that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We're very similar to that. And yeah, what was that planet though?
God,
I'm drawing a blank on it.
Kick myself. It starts with an M, doesn't it?
I don't know, macaroni, something like that.
There you go. But, sure, why not?
But yeah, if anybody in the chat has any questions that pertain to the article, especially, like we'll definitely like get into it, and we'll have more stuff this week too. So this is just like the only way I won't go into it is if it's stepping on like the next thing, if that makes sense. But yeah. So anyways, Fandom Empire, how's it going, dude? Nighttime stream, fuck yeah. Hope you boys had a great weekend. Watch the prequels this weekend. Love them more every time. Yeah, I've been with having Kenobi on the brain so much. I've been watching Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, just like kind of like putting them on.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it is fun how knowing what we know so far, how it's sort of altering the viewing experience of those two, at least in context. It alters it quite a bit, and yeah, and I think it's fun. The only thing that I kind of find myself like trying to figure out is Leia's message to Obi-Wan. You served my father during the Clone Wars, like the formality of it.
Yeah,
is that just some Senate bullshit form, being formal about it or whatever? And
I mean, she was under duress. She was getting shot at when she's when she's recording that.
Sure.
So
but I mean, but like after you see the show, you think it'd be like, Obi-Wan, it's your girl Leia, come get me, I'm in trouble. You know what I mean? Like that's what you, instead it's like, you served my father during the Clone Wars. And obviously we know the reality of the situation is that George Lucas wasn't time traveling to Disney to write the series in 2021 or whatever, and then time traveling back and making A New Hope in 1977, calling it Star Wars. Like, you know, it's sort of a retcon of sorts. But I'm curious if the audience loves it so much, if it's good. I think it's good. But if they love it so much, they just go like, "Yes, shut up, nerd. Who fucking cares, nerd?"
I mean, people
Or
do it with the OT. I mean, a lot. So
sure, from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, if you buy that, yeah. I mean, but when we but I'm wondering if the response to it is sort of like, well, yeah, it was okay. It was good. I guess it's all right. If that's the response, that I think, oh, Leia shouldn't have known him at all. That this is bullshit, and that's where I think that becomes a big issue. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it anytime the show is bad, it magnifies all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, because like I said, you could point out lots of stuff in the OT, but people are just like, I like those movies, so we'll give it a pass.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? She's really pretty, but she farts in her sleep. But I can see past it because she's really pretty. Like it's that's kind of like how these movies are for people. And some people are like, you know what? She ain't that pretty. That shit stinks. And they just can't. They're just like they just don't want anything to do with any of it. So I get it. But yeah. But they're kind of and with this series, boy, are they when I say playing with fire, I can't think of a better way of putting it. But yeah, they're kind of playing with fire a little bit, touching these iconic classic characters between the twins. Like a part of me goes, the less you do with them, in some ways, the better. And then I got like one friend, a lady on Twitter who like messages me, and she's just like, "What the fuck? Where's Luke? This is bullshit." And I'm like, well, I mean, it's like, it might be good that they're not going downtown to Luke Town,
Yeah.
But and there is Luke stuff I haven't talked about as well, but
and not to like try to sound condescending, but there's a lot of people that don't know anything about like story structure and what like stuff like that will make those kind of, it's like the people with the sequel trilogy, well, why did Luke have to be like that? Like, you want a boring ass story? I mean, you have to put conflict in it, and how else do you do that? With your characters, not like, oh, there's this big bad guy trying to kill you. It has to be like there has to be some kind of internal conflict with your characters too.
Yeah.
And so when people say stuff like that, it's like, okay, just your story has still got to make sense. You can't just say I want this and then that's the way it should be, and then assume that that's going to make a great story. It's not good.
That's the problem too with like a lot of YouTube commentators on Star Wars is they start watching whatever it happens to be. They come up with their analysis. They see a whole angle, a whole marketing strategy, a whole way to talk about this endlessly. Cha-ching. And then they don't follow through and pay attention anymore after that. They got the angle. And I gotta say, there is some overlap in this Kenobi story with Luke and the Last Jedi. They both start off as less than their heroic selves, and then they become the heroes who they are. They have to rise to being that hero, like as you're basically saying earlier, or there's nothing to do.
Right. Well, I mean, beyond that, I mean, like the whole saga is based off like the monomyth from Joseph Campbell. And if you look at where Luke would be at in his story post Return of the Jedi, he either there's two ways that those stories go. They take over and become the new bad guy, or they say fuck the world and they go off and hiding in a cave somewhere. And then the new hero has to basically come along and get them out of their funk. Now, I think that being said, I think the sequel trilogy does a very poor job of executing that story. And so I get where people are mad at the execution.
Yeah.
But the actual idea of it is great. It's perfect. It's exactly where, the Joseph Campbell monomyth takes that story. So unless you want to completely break the story structure that Star Wars is based off of, to go, off in a completely different offshoot direction, which obviously Lucas certainly wouldn't have done, then yeah, that's where you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
it just every single time I see people talking about Luke and the Last Jedi, it's like they watched the fucking trailer for the Last Jedi, and they came up with their analysis though, and then they
Mhm.
completely disregard the fact that about 20 minutes into the movie he stops being the guy at the start of the movie, and then by the end of it he's fucking teleporting to another planet to save the
Yeah.
rebellion. Like it's like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but there are a lot of shared motifs between what Obi-Wan does in this story
Yeah.
and what Luke Skywalker does in The Last Jedi specifically, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if the reception becomes the same or if it's taken completely differently
Yeah.
or what, because I mean because I think when it comes to Obi-Wan, people seem to want him to suffer a bit more.
Mhm.
Whereas when it comes to Luke, they want him to be like the fucking dad they never had who takes them on space adventures. Like it comes from this weird place of like you learned of Luke when you were 4 and then you just never dropped the idea. But
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, like, oh yeah, shit's hard for that guy. Yeah, fuck him. So I'm curious if
Yeah.
that matters, if that changes it too. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, you're introduced to Obi-Wan in that state in A New Hope.
yeah,
So that's where you first met the character. If The Last Jedi was the first movie you ever saw of Luke, and that was your baseline, you get obviously you get different. Yeah, because there's more parallels even with Yoda, because Yoda is like, even when Luke says, "Yeah, we ain't got to train this kid. He's too old. He's not ready. He's a fuck up."
yeah,
and then even when Luke leaves, Yoda's the same thing, but he doesn't teleport his ass to save anybody. He just sits on Dagobah. It's like, hey,
yeah,
good luck.
yeah,
Hope you make it back.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Because both stories. Like I keep making the joke. It's how Stella gets her groove back, and that's what
Yeah.
this is in essence as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why he can't commune with Qui-Gon, and it's not until though he goes, like I said, until he goes to a planet like Jabim and sees these people that are doing something, some humanitarian style work and stuff like that he starts to, and I think Leia as well. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm interested. We'll talk about it this week, and if you're around, obviously you're always welcome to come on. But I'm curious I'm curious as to your thoughts on when I talk about Leia a bit more, because I'm curious if A New Hope came out today and Leia's yelling at people, if Leia's condescending to people on the Death Star, could these fuckers handle it? I don't know.
Probably
I don't
not.
know, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because everything I'm hearing is it's the same Leia. Like she doesn't become that. Like she
cool.
just is that, which is yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, even Carrie Fisher said she'd kind of lost the character by Return of the Jedi, because she doesn't have those quips, and she's just kind of there, kind of doting and crying for most of Jedi, which
hold me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that characters need to be one dimensional, and and they can't have growth or anything, but at the same time, yeah, they're very different characters from those two movies. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely kind of a George problem. I mean, it's a George problem with Padme as well. Once you get to like you start Padme off, and it's like and I'm not trying to like jump on George or be woke against George, but I do think that like there's a part of that guy and his generation where they both love and respect a strong feminist, but also want something and have this ideal that doesn't necessarily interface with feminism, and that's where the characters get lost.
I'm gonna go a different route on that, because I think part of the problem is, and I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And one thing I do wonder is, because George is all about pacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Runtime, and keeping your audience engaged. After seeing things like Lord of the Rings or Infinity War, where you got like these 3-hour epic movies, 3+ hours sometimes, would George have considered doing a 3+ hour movie for any of the Star Wars movies? Because I think and I remember talking to Ari Salvatore that did the novelization
Yeah.
for Attack of the Clones. this was like, it might even have been before Attack of the Clones came out, but it's definitely before Revenge of the Sith came out.
Okay.
Yeah, it was before Attack of the Clones came out, because I remember him saying he's got a long way to go in this next movie. So, because he knows where 2 ends and where 4 begins, and to bridge the gap between where you leave Anakin at the end of episode 2 and
Right.
what has to happen in 3, that's a lot of story to pack into one movie. And same thing with Jedi, because of course there was no guarantee that was going to be the last movie, but he decided to wrap it up. And when you do that, it's like, okay, what do you got to cut? Because it's like, okay, I gotta focus the entire story on Anakin. Padme has no room in that story. So I get it. Yeah, Padme is basically a MacGuffin by Revenge of the Sith.
She
but
is, yeah.
I don't think it's like, oh, George can't write female characters or anything like that. I think it's literally because of course, the original script has a lot, her doing a lot more. And even the stuff that's cut out of episode 2 adds a lot to her character.
Oh yeah.
But it's just, in terms of keeping, runtime and pacing down, she's the first thing to go.
But like Leia was never, there was never really more to Leia in Return of the Jedi. Leia was always very much just like, Carrie will show up and be Carrie, we hope. And then with Padme, they did cut off like her starting the rebellion and stuff like that, which now actually is bad for that story, but really good for Star Wars in the end, it turns out. Because if you had it happen right there in that way, you'd lose a ton of story opportunity that they're able to clearly play with today.
Yeah.
So on one hand, bad then, good now, I guess, is one way of looking at that. But yeah. So but anyways, like my theory is that George likes cool ladies, but the resolution of the idea, or what he considers to be resolution, sort of crushes it. It breaks it. Like the paradigms just don't work. And I think that might even be common of that generation. But maybe I'm overstretching. But it's a loose theory of mine. I'm going to say kind of a loose theory.
I can't even really put it into context, even though I was around when A New Hope first came out. I was 2, but people would say like, oh, she was a strong female character in a time that there wasn't any. And I guess I don't know enough references to say if that was the case. Probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe a New Hope Leia is like considered a groundbreaking character and revolutionary for the time. But nowadays though, it's like, so what, almost, because you can name off a dozen movies. And even heck, even if George had done the sequel trilogies, it was his idea to have a female lead. Maybe he redeems himself with the 7, 8, and 9 if he actually does them.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think if he was pretty much saying if he had done 7, 8, and 9, Leia was going to be the chosen one, was kind of where he was going to take it and stuff. So it wasn't like he was going to try to fix some of that stuff. But and once again, I'm not trying to gang up on him. I'm more talking in context of a person of their day. I mean, remember there was a television show I loved as a kid. I watched it in syndication. Because it was on basic TV, like after school when I was a kid. It was Buck Rogers. And like when it starts, Wilma is Princess Leia, the other Princess Leia. She's been wearing the Padme outfit from Attack of the Clones, like, exactly. And she's right there. She's in the spaceship. She's like the same. Then all of a sudden they get to the second season and she's dressed like a flight attendant. It was really weird. It was like night and day. All of a sudden it just changed.
What do you wonder if they focus group that shit or something, and that's why they did it?
Yeah.
But, even Star Trek, the original Star Trek, because obviously the original series in the 60s was a very progressive show and dealt with a lot of, themes that were kind of pushing the boundaries, talking about, the civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of metaphors to that.
Sure.
But then you look at Captain Kirk and he's a total misogynist asshole.
Yeah.
So it's like, James Bond, same thing, So yeah, you definitely get some things where it's like, I remember I actually worked with a gentleman who was African American who was a big Bond fan, and the Ian Fleming Bond, like the old novels. And I remember him telling me that his wife read one of, I don't forget which one it was, but one of the old Ian Fleming novels, and she was like, the hell are you reading this for? This is racist as fuck. And he was like, product of the time, baby, product of the time. You know, you got to put it in context of when this is written. Yeah, because if you look, that stuff doesn't play now.
No, of course not. Yeah,
Yeah.
as it shouldn't. But yeah, but you can't be a presentist, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
they are a product of their time. If they were pushing any boundaries that they were pushing, like with Leia being who she is, it deserves the credit, you know. It just doesn't mean that it's the best we can do, but it definitely, like, you know, was yeah. I think that's part of an important part of like being a progressive is understanding that progress must happen.
Yeah.
not just we progress, done.
Yeah, Bill Maher did a really good spot on that on his show. I don't even think all that long ago, where he basically said, you know, sorry, none of us had time machines to know how this shit was going to age, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, yeah, you do have to cut people some slack on some things, you know. It's there's a point where you have to be, you know, a little understanding of those, you know, cultural norms of the time, and what was, you know, what played and what didn't. And you know, and there are certain things that you can't let slide, certainly, but you know, yeah, it's always good to look at things in context. Even a movie like Blazing Saddles, which absolutely definitely would not play in the modern age.
But you can see how punk rock it is when you watch it. You can see like exactly like the shit it was slinging at the audience, you know?
And it tell people it's very, you know, important, I think, to watch, because it's culturally relevant to that time. So if you really want to kind of understand that era and that time that was created in, that
Yeah.
is a good representation of what that atmosphere was like at that point in time.
Yeah.
And so if you watch it from that perspective and that point, you can actually gain something out of that, instead of just saying, well, this is fucking horseshit,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Nolan, does this mean this week's scoop is much bigger than the Partisans? That the Partisans got a Sunday night drop? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how crazy I want to get this week. But I I I got I needed this one to come out to contextualize some other ones.
So 100% confirmation, sequel trilogy retconned, right?
Retconned entirely. It's completely erased. I don't know how.
Well,
But
you know, as soon as they fired Kathleen Kennedy, you knew it was coming.
yeah, yeah. I mean, speaking of her, like, I just gotta say, like, though, everything that I hear about this one, once again, it pisses me off, and Lucasfilm doesn't deliver on things that they promised, or you know what I mean? Or when we're supposed to be getting something, and then it's just like, oh, it's just canceled now. Bye. You know, that sucks. But on the Kenobi one, I'm glad that they continued until it sounds like it was a story that was right. You know,
Yeah.
there's like a ton of just check boxes that you can do to make a Kenobi story. And I think fans will ultimately just go there. Oh, well, what if Captain Rex showed up and then Captain Rex was like, let's hang out, or you know, they'll just come up. They won't have the rest.
Yeah.
They'll just have that what if Captain Rex, and then they don't think any further. They're like,
Right.
and it's like, yeah, then what? Then what do they fucking do?
Right.
What did they have? They don't have. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing there.
Yeah, like the whole sequel trilogy moment of, oh, you had to get the original cast back together one last time. Why did you in episode 4? Did you need to get Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Jar Jar back together for a scene?
Yes.
Because
No.
it's like why? Why do you need to do that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's the last. It's like that's not a story element. That's just a fever dream, you know, wish list. And
Marketing informing a story as opposed to the story informing them
yeah,
what the
that's a
marketing should be or whatever.
right. That's a whiteboard gone wrong. You know, it's just, you know, let's just
Mhm.
write down cool shit and try to fucking mash it into a story. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a good way to do things.
No, it's
Yeah.
not.
I
No,
like what
and
the writer said about a Kenobi, you know, how he said like he thought there was things that definitely need to be in there. And so it sounds like he really had a you know a beat on this thing, and
yeah.
because it is, to me, it is in a lot of ways a story that writes itself.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what all of the pieces can be and how to tastefully play in those areas, you know,
Mhm.
like that's what I say. If you want a story where Kenobi never leaves Tatooine, and him staying on Tatooine is your prerequisite for it being good, that's not mine. I saw Book of Boba Fett. I never fucking want to spend 6 episodes of anything on Tatooine again, if I could help it, anytime soon, anyways. But but when you if that's your thing, then you really you can't win there. You've already lost those people. You can't please them. You've already lost. But if you want to make an adventure with Kenobi,
Mhm.
like how do you do it? And like
Yeah.
Leia, that's smart. That is a smart way of handling it. And then how do you get and then bringing Darth Vader in and allowing us to have that Darth Vader Obi-Wan Kenobi confrontation with Obi-Wan with Vader in the suit. That stuff is like that's what we wanted when we were like 6 years old and they were saying, "Oh, I'm going to make the prequels. Don't worry, guys. I'm writing it now." And then you're like, then 1994 comes, like 13, 14 years old. I was anyway. I'm like, all right. And then it comes out when I'm like 18. Like if they had told me when I was 6, I was going to be 18 years old by the time Phantom Menace came out, or 19 years old, whatever it was, I would have been like, oh, fuck that. I'm gonna go watch, I don't know, X-Files or something. Not think about this. Instead, I was like, when's it coming? When's it coming? And then it happens, and then like that's why I loved the spoilers at the time. Because I was just like, Lucas is gonna do some weird George Lucas stuff. I know it. And I was just like, nobody makes movies like him. I was like, okay, so read all the spoilers, and I was like, okay, so that's what it is. And I was able to go and enjoy it, and
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, and I still love those movies today because my
Mhm.
expectations were literally in check entirely. And
Yeah.
but now I like that this one's giving me a ton of what I wanted. Uncle
Yeah.
Owen, Darth Vader in the suit,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
No, I mean, yeah, I get like the whole expectations thing because even like actually it took me a while for to come around with Revenge of the Sith,
Mm-hmm.
and I finally one of the reasons why I realized because before Revenge of the Sith came out, a friend of mine sent me someone had done like a fan script for episode 3.
Right.
And my friend's like, "Oh, this is great," and I read it. I'm like, "This is shit." And he's like, "Well, let's see you do better." So I'm like, "All right, fuck it." So next thing I know, I find myself spending I don't know how many months writing a fucking script for Revenge of the Sith. Um, and and I kind of fell in love with and because I mean that wasn't even just like a checkbox like well this needs to happen this like I had like a full story like this is the motivation for this character, this is what gets us from A to B kind of thing. And so when it came out I was still kind of in love with my idea, and it took me a while to get over and love what I got as opposed to being hung up on what I had envisioned in my head. And so I get that, but a lot of
Yeah.
times though, people have these half-baked ideas of like, wouldn't it be cool if, if Darth Maul showed up in Obi-Wan? And they're like, okay, well, but he's not. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
the I don't know. I don't know if you call it the dark side of fan fiction or fan fiction gone wrong. I don't know what you call it, but that's where you go
yeah,
like, yeah, that's where it becomes man, it's like, yeah, it's like that's George Lucas's thing. Like it's just gonna do it his way. And then but at the same time, I mean, and I'm not trying to absolve him of all criticism or whatever. There's definitely things to critique there. But as time has gone on, I've I've appreciated them for as weird and awkward and just unique as they are for what it's worth. Like
yeah,
that's the other thing is like if they had been made by the filmmakers of that era, I don't know if they would hold up today. Like
right,
that's the other side of it. Like there's not, I mean, personally, I know people probably feel differently, but the Lord of the Rings movies, I don't really like them. I don't really connect with them as movies. They're really slow. I find them just to kind of meander. They're not
mhm.
really focused. And I know some people cry and shit. I wouldn't have the movie ruined to me by like this fucking dude blah during the third one.
Jesus
And I'm just like,
God,
I can't even
really?
appreciate this for what it is with this fucking
No,
dude crying next to me. But it was a bit much. I mean, it was, yeah, fucking they
okay,
threw the ring in the thing. And
hmm.
Sam is cool, but anyway, but it was like
Oh, man.
No, but like, like the Matrix, whatever happens, whatever the movie of the 90s, all of the great filmmakers. I mean, most of those movies don't actually hold up, I think, as well as the prequels do,
No.
even for their warts. I'm not saying that they're
Yeah.
absolved of the sins that they make, because they're not, but they like certain movies, or like Luc Besson movies. I loved them back then. I watch them now and I'm just like, this guy kind of sucks. It's really weird.
Right.
Like his stuff just didn't age well for me anyways.
Yeah,
But
no, I mean, I find the prequels to be very watchable over and over. I mean, the OT, and honestly, and I think I've said this on the show before, I'm like, man, I'm sick of the OT, you know?
mhm.
I've watched them a lot, and there just isn't as much packed in there, quite
Yeah.
frankly. I mean, how much are you going to see on Hoth and watch that movie 20 times? I mean, or Tatooine, you know, there's not a lot of there. So
Yeah.
with people, like, especially when people complain about special editions, I'm like, oh my God, it made it way more interesting.
I
Like
agree.
the Mos Eisley from the original cut is boring as hell.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like going to some crap bar in the middle of Arkansas, and it's not interesting. There's not fun. You don't want to go there. There's nothing fun happening there. Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
at least like, okay, cool. It's like we got a spaceport. There's like shit walking around.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
I was always all about the Mos Eisley changes.
Yeah.
That was like of all of the things that people had problems with. I was like, how? No, it's supposed to be like a backwater planet. I'm like, okay, but the concept that it's supposed to be a backwater planet, is that actually more fun? Because I don't think that's
Yeah.
actually. I mean, what it's supposed to be is just what you're saying. The movie never says this is supposed to be. It's Luke bitching to 3PO that it, like, he can't get a girlfriend because Cammy's dating Fixer. Nobody wants
Yeah.
to hang out.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's just
Right.
him saying this place is the if there was a bright center of the universe, this is the planet that's furthest from. That's pretty much it. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Like Mos Eisley's a spaceport. You know, I've flown into Tulsa, Oklahoma, and let me tell you, not a lot going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there's more than a bar and a moisture farm.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's let's be realistic. You know,
Yeah.
Tulsa's not the most exciting place on the planet, but at the same time, they have a little bit more there than like 2 locations.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. But yeah, I'm curious if this partisan concept, though, about them showing up in this episode and what it's going to inform, why. I'm curious about, are they telling the story because it's just to model to Kenobi? Is that it? Like, is that the whole point of there's people out there doing good things? But why make it the partisans? Is another like question that I have. Like I'm not trying to push something that isn't happening, because I don't know if there's anything more to it.
Yeah.
But I keep kind of going back to that in my head.
Who's the showrunner for Andor?
Was Tony Gilroy.
Okay, that's right. I was like, why is it drawing a blank? And
Yeah.
then I mean, we know Deborah Chow is directing Obi-Wan, but is she
Also
showrunner pretty much?
Yeah, she's this is her show, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm just trying to where the crosstalk happens with that kind of stuff is always interesting too, because two obviously very different projects, but then so who's the person that's getting involved in saying, wouldn't it be cool if we married these two ideas together and we put this in here and that in here?
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing too I wanted to bring up too is I've had it hinted that Indira Varma's character, the Imperial who she plays, people are calling her Tia. I don't know if that's her name, but that she's not what she seems. She's good. And I have reason to believe she has scenes with O'Shea Jackson. So I'm wondering if she is an informant, or if she's like supplying them, because that was also one of the, and none of this probably pertains, but I always bring it up. Yeah. George Lucas's original like bold point he wanted to make with his live action shows with Underworld was that you have a rebellion, you have an underworld, and you have an empire. And we see all of these things in play today, but the idea was always that the empire is what creates the black market, and that leads to the corruption of the empire, which then funnels the items through the black markets of the underworld to the rebellion. And so I'm curious if they're going to portray her as some sort of cog in that machine. And is it corruption, or is it straight up like, I want to help these people? You know what I mean? So, and I can do it by playing the game here and then getting them supplies and food and whatever, intel or whatever it happens to like be. But because I know these characters and Nanjiani's character, like they're in it, but they're also like, I don't know. I'm not convinced that they're necessarily resolved in it. And so I'm not sure. I could be wrong though. But with that in mind, it makes me think that if these characters may have a bigger impact on this era, this 10 years, this 10-year mark. And so maybe if they're not in season 1 of Andor, maybe they will show up in season 2 of Andor or be players in that world as it goes on. But if you want to look at it from a more realistic production side of things, Andor's filming over in England, and this one films over here in El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and for the most part.
And there's at least a 5-year gap in the timeline.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, because it might be really interesting to. We have O'Shea Jackson. He's in this show. There's this crisis. He's helping. Inspires Kenobi. And he is in turn inspired by Kenobi, and then we fuck off. I think. I think it was kind of, and then so he's out there. So it could be cool if 5 years later, you figure you see him in Andor. But at the same time, I feel like if O'Shea Jackson was in the UK filming on Andor, that probably would have got out. That probably would have been noticeable. People would have probably have mentioned it,
Yeah.
It probably would have been a thing. I just knowing how they roll over there, I feel like I would have heard about that, and I didn't hear anything about it.
Yeah. Realistically, you would have to have a situation probably where Andor's filming, they've got their cast, and all of a sudden the people working on Obi-Wan say, oh, hey, wouldn't it be great if we get so-and-so to be an Obi-Wan too? Because Obi-Wan didn't start casting until what?
20. It's like 2020. Well, it was a weird one though, because they kind of started casting, right, and then they stopped the production. They picked back up, and
so do you think they kept some of the same talent they had initially intended?
I don't know.
From that first run. I mean,
yeah,
Gregor.
yeah. I was, yeah, like I could be wrong. I think the Inquisitor might have been originally there. They may have been cast during the original run, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about any of who stayed. I never really dug into that.
Yeah.
I didn't really, you know what I mean? It was like,
yeah.
And it wasn't like, it's not until like after filming usually goes on when people start talking about, oh yeah, I was working with O'Shea Jackson and blah, blah, blah. He's a nice guy. You don't really hear that until it's happened. And also like with most of the people who are in the show, that's not like, oh, I'm gonna be working with O'Shea Jackson next month. Can you believe it? Like he's not that big yet. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't really happen like that with these actors.
Yeah.
So that's always a hard one. That's why I always say I'm not good with casting stuff. Usually I'm better when they've been around a crew and somebody I could talk to about it.
Yeah.
So,
and there might have been somebody too that they wanted to cast, and then when they picked up production, that person wasn't available anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Similar, like the Jamie Lee Curtis thing that you reported on.
Yeah,
it could have been somebody that they had in mind, and they said, "Sorry, I got this thing going for 3 months."
Yeah, well, and Dell is asking right now, I think, about a Mandalorian 3 question. Do you think Christopher Lloyd could be playing Olmec, or is he a Mandalorian? And so I still don't know, but if he's the crusty old white guy Remember I told you about a crusty old white guy and a crusty old dark skinned guy, and they were Mandalorians. I am pretty sure. But Olmec, I mean, you know, did I can't remember if Olmec died though. I mean, he was like a puppet president, the puppet president for Maul, and then he wasn't Mandalore, and he was like the puppet, kind of like
he was killed. Yeah,
he was killed, right?
Yeah, he was killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there we go. Sorry, Dale. Hate to tell you this, but that old fucker who gave those kids the poison juice boxes early on in the Clone Wars, I think he's dead. I don't think he made it.
Yeah, it is Star Wars though. So.
Oh wait, he's all armor wearing, or you know what I mean? Oh wait, he's in Mando 3. I just realized I was asking if he's in Kenobi. Left out. It's okay. But I mean, it was a good question because it's like so many of these things I have to like go back and go like, wait, he's dead, right? He died in the cartoon. So Nolan says, I'm going, go sit in suspense, cult leader. Yeah, welcome to the cult, guys. But yeah. So anyways, I'm glad that we're seeing in a weird way Rogue One get some sort of like whenever anything feels like it matters still.
Yeah.
Like that's what always where I was like a little bit afraid. Then we heard that Andor was going to be a show, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Like that made me happy. But then I was also still like a little bit afraid that like, what if we just have this weird like vein of Rogue One stuff and then not connected to anything else, you know? And so the Partisans though showing up in the video game, the Partisans showing up in the cartoon, the Partisans showing up here, showing up, and then we got Andor coming out, Rogue One. It starts to make it where we start to see like, okay, these things are they are being pulled from all over the place, and the stuff is all interconnected, and I appreciate that because I like connectivity when it's even if it's like subtle, and I start to see like just a bigger story forming that even if it's not intended. I think it is intended in this instance, though.
Sure. Yeah.
The implications.
So you think we ever get Star Wars Underworld? You think
No.
they ever go back and do that? No.
No, I think I think elements of Underworld informed Solo a Star Wars story.
Sure.
And like, and like that just did stuff like it had how Lando met Han. We got that. How Han met Chewbacca. We got that. It had a young Boba Fett stuff and how he connected to them. So maybe we'll see that pulled in some other way down the road. Maybe they'll get Daniel Logan to play Boba Fett and they'll have him meet Han Solo and they'll have them have some kind of thing. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. But anyways, where I'm going with that is that they had 60 scripts in various forms. And I have a feeling only like one season worth of those scripts was done. That means 16 episodes worth of content. How much of that is even could be placed into canon today after and who knows how much of the Han stuff was. We don't know what took place in what season. We don't know what's been stepped on with the Pikes now that makes all of that not make sense. So I think if anything, it becomes like, oh, we want to do a story with the Pikes, and then they'll be like, well, maybe you might want to look at what George did, and then they look at it, and then they go, okay, and then they pull what they like, and I think that might be where that ends up being. It's just this referential kind of stuff. But I've also had a theory that when George Lucas dies, they may start trying to pull out George Lucas's last Star Wars epic, and then they just like go and rewrite it and be like, never let those scripts get out, and they just change it all and sexy it up a bit and put it in the canon, and maybe that happens. I think I think that will happen, but
could be. Yeah.
I mean, it would also be great though if they're not going to do anything with it if they just published it,
right?
Made a giant book of a couple or even a couple volumes if they needed to of those things of those scripts and just and that would be great. Call it Legends and it'd be great.
Well, I think it was a bit of hyperbole when I think Pablo Hidalgo at one point said like they basically have those scripts they look at and they consider that part of the canon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably an over exaggeration or an overstatement. I'm sure they look at those. I'm sure it informs some of their decisions or has form some of their
Yeah.
decisions, but I don't think they look at it like, well, George Lucas said in episode 8 of Underworld that Jabba the Hutt was. They don't give a shit.
Yeah, I think it falls into like source book level stuff that they try to pull from. I
Yeah.
mean, Kathleen Kennedy told I think Peter at Slash Film that it was a treasure trove of content and ideas. I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
And that there you go. I mean, I think that really pretty much says, but they clearly didn't make it. It was the first thing that would have been ready to make. They didn't make it. And looking at Boba Fett, I kind of wish they had.
Right.
So, because I mean, if it was going to be fucking wacky,
yeah,
this would be George Lucas weird. Well, let's just go George Lucas weird instead of whatever that was. I'm mean to it.
George Lucas weird is doing it credit. It's Ed Wood weird.
It
doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, but like it's like I like it all by itself, and it's the same with episode 9.
God,
I like if you just show me a 2-minute clip from it, or if I watch 15 minutes of it, I'm like, yeah. But when I sit and I watch 2 hours of it, I start to go, I don't want this like this. Like this isn't and that's one of the things that George Lucas knew how to do that they don't know how to do today. Like they know how to give you what you want or what you think you want, but they don't know how to dangle it right. They can't space it out in the right ways and make it flow. You are not, I should say, sometimes they can. Episode 9 couldn't, Book of Boba Fett couldn't. But I like everything just by itself. Like it's hard to argue with any individual moment. But when I put it all together, okay, yeah, I know. I mean, it's like I feel like I feel like I could understand the rationalization of the choices in those moments at times. I don't necessarily respect it every time, but I could understand it. But when I put it all together, I'm like, I don't know how you guys made this collection of choices together. It's like my real life. How did you make all this collection of choices, you idiot? But like when I watch, when I piece together all of these elements for Kenobi, and I look at the story, I'm like, I feel like, I feel like this is right. Like you got Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's down and out, everything's bad. Qui-Gon's not appearing to him. This kid comes out of nowhere, or this younger Jedi, if you will, comes out of nowhere, brings the bad guys to Luke, the kid he's supposed to be guarding. And they don't want him there, and then Leia's in trouble, and he needs to go save her, and like it's a reason to go there, and then he ends up like in these exotic places, saving her like in a spice den, and then he ends up going, you know what I mean, and then then they end up together on like a Paper Moon style kind of journey, trying to get her back to safety, and then Darth Vader is sort of awoken in the process. And now he's after them. And then he ends up meeting these young rebels who are doing this very good thing. And he understands that like he's not the only one. You know what I mean? And then he gets his ass kicked by Darth Vader. And then he has to go back though. But in order to stuff I don't want to get into yet, but he has to go fight Darth Vader again. And then he does. And then but then he ends up like fulfilling his original charter by the end of it as well. That's the thing. I'm getting ahead of myself there, but it's like, and I'm just like, and then he wakes up, you can see Qui-Gon at the end, and I'm just like, this is a story I want, and the story makes sense, and all the choices together feel smart. Like I'm like, man, I'm glad we got Deborah Chow like on this, and not Deborah Chow on like Boba Fett, because as much as Boba Fett would have been better with having Deborah Chow on it, Boba Fett could be fucking, I will rule with respect. He could just do all that bullshit he wants, but you could not do that with Kenobi.
No, yeah.
I want to God with respect. Like you have to have better explanations, better answers. And
well, and I mean, at the end of the day, it is, and I've said this a million times, it's about the execution, because I've seen bad ideas that have been executed. Like I didn't have a lot of optimism for Boba Fett going in because it sounded like a bad idea.
Yeah.
But they could have executed the shit out of that, and I could have been like, you know what? I was wrong, man. They fucking rocked that shit. Same thing with Kenobi. I mean, it sounds and I'm agreeing with you. I mean, I've heard nothing but positive things. It's everything I've seen is pointing to this being a great show. But they could have had this great idea and poorly executed, and it's a shitty show. I mean,
Yeah.
so the ideas and the concepts almost don't matter in the sense that, like, if something's well executed, that's where it's the make or break. A good story poorly executed is a bad movie or a bad TV show. And you can take what
A
sounds
whole
like
generation would say that about the prequels. That's what it is, according to a whole
a lot of
generation of
people. Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Great concept, poorly executed. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, I can, you know, I can
Mhm.
at least see that where that's coming from. I disagree with that, but yeah,
Yeah, same.
yeah.
I mean, I think if George Lucas had said, "I'm going to spend $200 million on each one of these movies," then yeah, they would have probably been executed much differently. But they were like, "I'm going to make this for 120 million, whatever the original budget was," and then he did that. So he did it within the confines of the project as he felt was right for Star Wars and his company at the time, but not for your Generation Xers mostly.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like what he did budget wise, I mean, I don't think there's anything that more that he could have done. I mean,
Well, I think
like he cut
if they
corners.
had more budget, you would have had more. The schedule would have been less intense, and you would have had more time for nuance in the performances. You would have, they would have like when you. Well, I don't know how seriously to take the behind the scenes documentaries. I don't believe in reality TV. And I definitely don't necessarily believe that those documentaries are necessarily reality all of the time. I would love to interview the director of the beginning and just to get into that to some degree,
Right.
if possible. That would be great. But you see him like set up like a shot and they like go and it's like they do a take or two and they get it. They just are done.
Yeah. I remember Liam, that was like the first shot I think they did of Phantom Menace with Liam was in Shmi's home. And like they did one take and George Lucas was like, all right, next setup. And Liam was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Really? Okay. Yeah.
And at the same time, that's even hard to criticize too, because like, okay, maybe they were planning to use a master shot for everything, and they, in the coverage that they were using, and yeah, so I don't know, was it just George being like good enough, or and then of course he had his digital production, post production that he was pioneering, where it's like, well, I could cut this frame in half and put two different shots together, and I could go back and I could do reshoots and where we do pickups. So I don't know how much of that was his own.
Somebody needed to get George into a room with a band, and they needed to go, okay, so look, George, here's what happens when we record the instruments all together. Now, here's what it sounds like when we don't. Which one do you want? You know what I mean? And he would, and if somebody had shown him that, he would have saw like, because that's what they're doing, but they're doing it with acting. And that's where you're trying to act natural. Like with music, we're culturally used to both of those versions of that, but with acting, you're not. And that's where the prequels, and it used to feel more normal to me.
Yeah.
But now after getting more Star Wars with more mainstream acting, when I watch the prequels now, the acting actually bothers me more than it ever has.
Yeah, and I get the idea of like what Lucas says in terms of the style, and people can argue like, oh, it's just he's making this shit up or whatever. But no, I mean, like there's like this whole melodrama tone to the movies, and that's where the sequels really seem out of place. And I try to explain it to somebody by showing like just the trailer for Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just so over the top, and like people are crying and posed like, getting tortured, and it's like, and it's like this acting is like so out of place from the other 6 movies. You can say it's great acting, but it's just like saying, you can put a concert violinist on a punk rock album and say, isn't that like amazing? Yeah, but it doesn't belong here. It's like, get the fuck out. This isn't your gig. So
that's my take on the sequels. I mean, when you get down to it, like I see them as I do like the trilogy, but I see it as really like a different story. It's a continuation. It's a sequel for sure, but it doesn't. It really. I think when you're in the frame of mind that when you're like, oh, it's episode 7, that means it's Return of the Jedi Part 2. When you think of it that way, it's like, well, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to experience it in a way that's like where you like it, like because it doesn't. But when you look at it like just as Rey's trilogy, then you're like, and those characters from the other things are there, and you're like, okay, yeah, that works. But I'm with you. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. Like it matches in any way, and that. But that's what I experience more is that kind of acting and that level of or that style. That now when I watch episode 1 and 2 and 3, it's like, whoa, this is drastically different, and now this feels more out of place. I think in some ways, though, the sequel trilogy I think is more palatable, in a mainstream popcorn movie kind of sense. And so in a weird way, the prequels are both better to me and more challenging to me for me at the same time.
Yeah,
I can, because the ideas and the it's just so much stranger. It's choices that are completely unexpected the whole time, but then you have that acting difference. And to bring this back to Kenobi, I'm curious how it ends up feeling when we see that with Kenobi, because I think it's more of that acting than Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones acting in this.
Yeah, we're in this weird spot, and I think you guys brought this up with like Batman. I think Rob mentioned like, it doesn't always have to be an Academy Award winning performance. Now after Dark Knight, if everybody feels like, this has to be some kind of highbrow art form. And it's like you can do silly stupid, or you can do the kind of over the top melodrama of the acting is stilted in the original trilogy, and it's it's just kind of what it is.
Right.
And so people are like, well, I don't like that. It's like, well, it's one of those weird things. It's like, where does the franchise need to adapt to an audience versus where does an audience need to kind of accept this is what this thing is? I mean, obviously you look at something like James Bond, and that's, it's not even recognizable anymore from where it was when it started.
Yeah. It's a completely different. It's gone through completely just weird iterations, and then come out onto the other end of that side, like Octopussy to the Casino Royale remake or whatever. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I'm curious when it comes to Star Wars too, like with the prequels, like, or even the originals, like there's stuff Mark Hamill does in A New Hope that I love Luke, so I just see past it, but it also feels like such an old, timeless movie that you just go like, okay, like if I put on Little House on the Prairie, I might laugh at the acting every now and then, but you immediately just fall into the style and how it is, and you just accept it, and you're like, this is the story, and then you kind of like go with it, and with the prequels, I wonder if we ever hit a moment where it just feels out of time now, because it does look like the CGI looks weird, everything, and you just go like, that's just how it is. Like,
I think it feels out of time. I feel out of time when it came out. I mean,
no, it did. Yeah. But it was also why, but that made it hard to accept as a modern like movie. I was okay with it. Like, it didn't bother me. I was like, that's kind of, I mean, Mark Hamill, like, he's great. I love Mark Hamill. And when you see him in the sequel trilogy, you really see like how the guy, or especially like in The Last Jedi is the movie, he grew a lot as an actor. He played himself, but he played himself really, really well in The Last Jedi. And but there's some stuff in Return of the Jedi even where I'm like I fucking love when he's like, I'm like a Jedi, or I'm a Jedi like my father before me. It's fucking rad. but what is that? Nobody talks like that. Like it's completely like if somebody was saying that in a different movie, I'm a cop like my father before me, you'd be like, what the fuck is this guy on about? But it's completely okay.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, and people are just weird in terms of what they accept and what they don't, But
Yeah.
I think it is. It's just you get used to it. It's a product of its time when it came out. People that were born obviously with it. It always kind of fascinates me, like someone like like Johnny, who's on the show, who's a younger cat, and
Yeah.
obviously
Little
came.
young
Yeah.
we call him the young buck of the Making Star Wars family.
Yes, there you go. And it's like, well, that obviously it played with other people, but I mean, then again, you have people that are like younger than me, and they like Duke Ellington, and it's like I always wonder, like, well, how the hell did that happen? It's just such a weird kind of, because it's so not part of that cultural milieu that you're born into. It's like, how do you yeah, I don't know. So yeah, so it is, I mean, it's a weird thing, like you have to advance your franchise, but this is what it was.
Yeah.
And especially when you're not rebooting it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, James Bond, I mean, that's clearly it's a whole nother story. It's taking elements, but
because I think we're going to see Ewan doing not George Lucas acting.
yeah,
As he was great as Obi-Wan. He was so great. He was able to take the George Lucas stuff and pretty much make it very palatable,
yeah,
like the whole time. But at the same time, this story, I don't think it goes there. So I'm not worried. Like right now, knowing the story, I feel like it's a great. Like, I love Revenge of the Sith. It's like my favorite movie, my favorite Star Wars movie. But I'm curious if they end up like, do they sound really well next to each other?
yeah.
But I'm curious if they end up playing well next to each other in the end. Or do we just feel like, whoa, this is different?
Yeah, I don't need like Kenobi in a cave crying or doing like some kind of like internal monologue of him. If they go that route, I mean, all I need is just him, his like head in his hands, and kind of just like you see that scene where he's on the train in the trailer, he's just kind of head down, just kind of like it sucks. Kind of, that's all I need. I don't need to say anything. I don't need him to like overly emote. I get it. Dude's in a dark place.
He's talking in his head. He's all, hello there, hello there, hello there, hello. It's good. Hello there, hello there, hello there. Like what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but all these were even like at the end of the Batman, where they, and it's like you see that in so many movies, like all of a sudden the hero goes out, they say it's always darkest before dawn, but it's like just some like cliched, hackneyed, over the top, internal monologue that's like voiced over, and it's like, just, I don't need that. It's a movie.
Yeah,
I get the point.
yeah.
It's like it's becomes at some point it becomes silly. Like in the Batman, that was like one of the it's like, just end the movie here. Don't I'm getting the visuals, I'm getting the pictures. I don't need him talking, telling me what's going on.
Yeah. 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 I don't think we're gonna have anything like that. I haven't heard anything like that. I mean, I don't think it takes itself too seriously or anything like that either. Like it sounds like it's just like it's Star Wars, but I think it's going to be the prequels with a bit of that fine line between the Force Awakens and Rogue One style stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, in terms of the acting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
So Rogue One was fine. I mean, I think Rogue
Yeah.
One acting fits fine with the New Hope.
Mhm.
I mean, like when Jen's father died, she wasn't all just, and everything was even enough where it was not like they were trying to like win an Academy Award for giving up.
Yeah, it makes the bold points, but it doesn't linger too much. And they logically deal with all of the interactions, like, you're going to shoot my dad kind of stuff, and I didn't do it, did I, kind of moments, and you're like, okay, we can move on now.
Yeah,
and
they don't stick in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I think, one of the good things that Gilroy probably brought to it. Like, let's not linger on shit too long when it doesn't matter, but also not be dumb.
You think it was Gilroy or Edwards?
Probably Gilroy, but
Yeah.
probably. I mean, like the stuff I'm talking about right now, that was shit that I know was like reshot.
Yeah.
All of the like a lot of the stuff that sounds like it was reshot were scenes that had explanations, but that were ultimately good. You know, like what's it called, the Ring of Caffeine or something like that. I can't remember that, where they start like that, like the planet with like the 2 asteroids with like the city built
Okay.
into
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
asteroids.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that was, I remember that was shot after
Mm-hmm.
the Imperial science officer stuff, where they're all lined up out at the end and they're going to do the sniping scene. That was added later.
Wow.
That was all that stuff was like redone. And yeah, but anyways, yeah, but I'll be back tomorrow. We'll have more stuff tomorrow. I'm gonna do Star Wars Santa show in the morning. At least I think so. I haven't talked to him yet, but I believe that's the plan.
Cool.
And I'm gonna do Star Wars Santa show in the morning, and then come back at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and do this show. And well, I think I'll have another nugget of Kenobi tomorrow. I think that is currently the plan. Unless something happens, then it won't happen. But I think it's going to happen. I'm this close to promising.
Happy thoughts.
This close.
Positive.
Yeah. And it's something that people have been, hardcore fans have been asking about. It's like detail. And I got the answer. And so I'll bring that to the people.
Yeah.
No.
Padme confirmed.
Padme, no Padme. Padme's ghost is hanging out with Saw Gerrera, in this story. They're just chilling. She's like, I was going to start a rebellion once, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure you were. I'm sure that's what happened. But anyways, yeah. So thanks for hanging out with me tonight, James.
Thanks for having me on, man.
And having the conversation. It's a lot easier than trying to do it myself. That's for sure. I'm pretty good at talking to myself. Hello there.
Got to pull a Gollum, you know. We'll just do a split screen with yourself.
But yeah, and whenever you're free, dude, just tell me, and I'll send you the invite, because it's always great hanging out with you.
Cool.
And oh wait, we got one last comment. I think Dell says he likes the sequel trilogy. The only thing different is the only thing different is that some thought we get the EU. Yeah, that's true. And I'll just throw it out there that we could definitely take away that some thought we'd get the EU, some got the sequel trilogy, and in the end, it proves that you cannot make everybody happy, no matter what you do, because the EU didn't make me happy, and the sequel trilogy didn't make them happy. I like elements of all of it, but you know, it is what it is. But I gotta say, I know I'm building it up, but I feel like Kenobi is the one that I feel like when I've heard should make people the happiest out of everything ever. This is the one where I'm like, this one doesn't, like with Book of Boba Fett, I heard things, and then it was like, oh, the action's going to carry that. Oh, the action's going to carry that. Oh, the action, it's going to carry that.
So let's say better than Rogue One, because I think that's kind of right now the gold standard for Disney Star Wars. At least it is for me.
Yeah, I think I think so. But I also think that this is more force-based, mystical. You know, it has like those elements in it, and it's like it's the Jedi side of things, though. So that's where I tend to shy away from it, because I feel like Rogue One happens when you are completely not on the Jedi side of things as much as the franchise wants itself to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. And that's kind of what I appreciated with Rogue One, is that it was like a true war movie.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you had unknown characters, so it was a little more left to surprise in terms of what could happen. But but I love the mystical stuff. So
but like it's like the same kind of thing, though. I mean, it does its own story, has its own journey, but it feeds into the same thing. Like they both feed into A New Hope. And so they both are sort of adding this extra pillar. Not that A New Hope even needs it, but it's adding this extra support to the whole thing. And I mean, I think when George Lucas sees it, I think he's gonna say,
I like spaceships.
I think that's what he's gonna say. But
all about spaceships.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But anyways, we're gonna take off. Be back tomorrow. Thanks to everybody who's a channel member. Anybody who watches the video, please like it if you are still here.
Or else.
I should have, like it. And if you're watching it later, leave a comment or tell us what you think, and I will look at it. I will answer it, and I'll either answer it via text. I read all the comments, and I'll either answer it via text on the site, or I'll screenshot it and we'll talk about it on the show if it's like something that really is profound or whatever. But let's be honest, YouTube comments are usually just like, bro, and I'm like, bro. But all right, we'll be back tomorrow. Bye.
It's not about spaceships.
Making Star Wars Show. Making Star Wars Show. Making Star Wars Show. Making Star Wars Show.
It's not about spaceships.